Good morning, my YouTube family. How's everybody doing today? Hope y'all are in good mental health. Another day, another dollar, right? Ain't that what they say? But I wanted to talk about communication barriers. I don't have a lot of time because I gotta go to Walmart today because tomorrow night is my day off, going into Monday. So I got a lot of catching up to do on my studies. And I gotta catch that run, that Saturday crowd at Walmart. Luckily, I don't got a whole lot of stuff to get, but I do gotta make this video pretty quick. When you're dealing with communication, a lot of times what causes these difficulties in communication is these communication barriers. One of the main communication barriers is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when people look at you and they prejudge your situation based off of maybe your gender, your orientation, your religious background, your race, your ethnicity, your income status, your job title. All these things people would prejudge you on. For example, if you see someone speak another language, and just because they don't understand your linguistics of how you speak, you might think that they don't have education, or you might think that they're slow or stupid. So these are confirmation bias, and we as humans, we tend to prejudge a lot, and it becomes a barrier because it stops you from communicating and being yourself. If you want to really get to know people, you got to be yourself. You got to be genuine. You got to be authentic. You got to be transparent. Of course, it comes with limitations because when you first communicating, you can't really tell a person everything about yourself, but you want to be as natural as possible. You don't want to be over there plotting and thinking of, well, what am I going to say and how am I going to sound, and you go all up in your head and you're overthinking the situation. Because linguistics, even though people can read you as far as like what you're saying and try to decipher between your words, they can also read your body language. They can read your aura. They can read your energy. They can read if you're uncomfortable around them, if you're comfortable around them. Hold on. This thing always... I got to get a better AirPod. This is the no-name brand one. People can read your body language, especially if you're one of those people like me who's very expressive. My facial expressions and stuff like that. So, like, for example, if a person is avoidant, they're the opposite. They're going to hide their emotions inward. So they may really like you. They may really have some genuine feelings about what you're saying. They may really think what you're saying is, awesome or something. But the fact that they have all this stuff going on in their head about themselves, they're so self-focused on this invisible audience. And that's another thing when you have a lot of lack of confidence, that can be a barrier in you getting to know people. When you have a lot of barriers, self-esteem issues. This is a short snip video, but as I get to make more videos, and like I said, maybe towards the end of the year, going into next year, I want to do live Zoom calls with people. If you struggle with your personality, a lot of times it's stuff that you can work on, that you can get out of the way. Like you're your own roadblock. You're getting in your own way. And part of getting in your own way is you don't understand yourself. Someone didn't pour into you when you were growing up. So they didn't amplify your traits to make you see that your traits are actually not as bad as you might think. If it is bad, it may be some slight improvements that you can make that can make people actually hear you. People don't have to like you, but they can hear you, meaning they can have an admiration or respect for you, but they don't necessarily got to be on your type of time. They don't necessarily got to go out to the game with you, or to the club, or to the movies and actually want to like you. But even if you're different from somebody, you have the in group and the out group, or you're just the outsider, you're just the type of person, you don't blend with everybody. That don't make no difference when it comes to getting to know people and communicating. Do me a favor and watch this movie. It's an old movie from the 90s. And the name of the movie is called The Breakfast Club. This is not the radio station. This is an actual movie with Molly Ringwald and Emilio Estevez. Those are the main characters that I remember as far as the names. But in this movie, there are a bunch of misfit teens, maybe in their 17, 16 years old, and they get detention. and they have to deal with this mean principal or whatever. And nobody likes the principal, and he leaves them in this one room to spend the rest of the day as far as like a punishment. And everyone has their own unique archetype in that movie. And when I said archetype is something that Ewing, the psychologist, talks about, where everyone is born with a particular archetype, your personality type. And some of these personality types are strong, where it's like your aura is so strong you just can't help it. You attract people even when you're not trying to. You have to know these things about yourself. You can't get uncomfortable because your aura is very strong, it's very powerful. Like for example, one of the actors in the movie, they're considered the rebel. So they're always, speaking out and just going against the grain. Everybody want to have a cool flow, and here comes the rebel. They want to question stuff. They want to be. Now you have problematic rebels, and then you have rebels that actually they have a cause. They make sense. They go against the grain. Like Tupac, his archetype will be considered a rebel. Now, if you look at Tupac, people that don't know, I'm sure you know Tupac, but people that don't know Tupac, he's a rapper. And, he come from the Hard Knocks life or whatever, but the stuff that he had to say, his message, it reached all across the globe. No matter what race, no matter what ethnicity, you understood his message. You understood his walk of life, his journey. And he wasn't holding back. He wasn't like, well, because you remember back in those days when Tupac came out in the 90s or whatever, there was a lot of bias. There was a lot of confirmation bias in the music industry. You couldn't say certain stuff, but Tupac was like, man, I don't care what y'all say. I'm going to say this message whether you like it or not. Okay? One of my favorite songs is Hail Mary. I don't know what I like about that song. Maybe it's the beat. It just has that eerie, you know what I mean? And that guy Nipsey Hussle, he kind of was like a energy, like that type of like energy like Tupac. So you got to get to that point where, sorry, something went in my eye. You got to know, it could be my eyelash. No, the makeup on my eyelash. It could be, my phone is heating up from this sun. Let me get back. What was I saying? You got to get to that point where you know who you are. Do you know your archetype? There's a task and an activity that I wanted to do, but I don't have enough time, and I need my whiteboard to do it. But the task is called PASK, and if you look it up, it's on, I think it's Squawk. I don't know how to say the word. SquawkTools.com. SQA something tools. If you type it in, it's a long plethora of activities that you can test yourself, and it's for you to test yourself and to test others. It's supposed to be done as a group. So let's say we're all in a group and we're all doing the activities. It allows you to see how much bias you have, because you may think you cool, calm, collected, open, flexible, adaptable, and then you take these little quizzes and you're like, damn, I didn't know I was so rigid in my thinking. Because your thinking can kind of like oppose the physical part of you. Like you might physically be a nice person, you might physically be friendly, but you're not really, you might want to be open, right? But you're not really open in your thoughts. You're not open in your philosophies. You're not allowing people to be themselves. You got a problem because somebody else is a Muslim, and because you're a Christian or a Jew or Moran or whatever, when a person mentions Allah, your face cringes up. Somebody come around you in the office and they like, man, I went to this Buddha meeting last night, and all of a sudden you rolling your eyes and you're like, oh, you know what I mean? You're not being reasonable. So these little quizzes allow you to see what type of person you are. Are you rigid? You have to know these things are going to be your communication barrier. When you go on job interviews, they're going to ask you things like that's going to show how diverse you are in your thinking. They want to know, are you okay, doing work next to somebody that has these rigid religious beliefs? Or why is my face is getting on my nerves today. Or you might be one of those types that is very chauvinistic. You might be a male that feel like females shouldn't have a higher position than you. So you coming in the office pissed the hell off that you making $22 and she's making $40, and you're like, how did that happen? You know, and then you don't even realize that maybe she was spending 10 years in school while you was boinking somebody. You know, like all these things, you got to be realistic in your thinking that these can be barriers to your communication. Another barrier is past traumas. You coming into relationships, you're all bent up, you're all bottled up, you haven't released a lot of this resentment towards relationships. You know, you might have a resentment in general, and then you might have a resentment to a similarity that this person might do. They could be an innocent bystander in the relationship. They're just doing some habitual habit that they normally would do, but because it reminds you of an ex, you start feeling some type of way, right? Instead of knowing, okay, well, I got to go get some healing, I got to express myself to this person, you bottle it in. The first stage is communicate. You have to communicate. As uncomfortable as that conversation might be, you're going to have to get some stuff off your chest, because eventually it's going to come out anyway. And then when it come out, it's going to come out really nasty. So get it off your chest, like, hey, I didn't like how my partner used to store chips up in the corner. I haven't recovered yet, so I might get a little uncomfortable. Don't take it personal. I'm working through it because I genuinely want to get to know you. Or let's say you're in a long-term relationship. I genuinely still love you. This is just something that still has caused PTSD. I'm going to get counseling for it, but I don't want you to feel like it's something personal. It's nothing against you. Just be real. The whole idea is you want the person to see what you're struggling with. You want them to understand more about you. Because if you leave it up to them to figure it out, they're going to think the worst. You know, we as humans, we kind of like regard it, because this is a nature versus nurture thing. So as humans, we always want to feel like we want to be nurtured. We don't want to be attacked. We want to be in a situation where it's safe. It's safe to, pour your heart out or be vulnerable, right? So you always going to be guarded that, okay, if I do this, is it going to lead to my detriment or to my success? But sometimes when it comes to these barriers, you are your own detriment. It's not the other person. And then you realize, okay, we do live in a society where people are out to get you, right? But you have to be strong. You can't be super sensitive. So believe it or not, being guarded is being super sensitive. So you got to release these fears. If you fear that, well, I go to the office and I communicate and people don't receive me well, get to like yourself. Say, well, I thought my conversation was good. I don't know why they were acting funny. And then after a while, you'll see why they were acting funny. All things will be revealed. It always gets revealed, whether it's down the line or right away. Next thing you know, you might see that same people that you thought was being shady do the same thing to somebody else, and you're like, oh, it's just a gang, it's just a clique thing. Okay, I got it. I have to be the in crew in order to be accepted. You know how it is, high school bullshit. So you have to kind of don't jump to conclusions and be like, oh, they didn't respond to what I said, so maybe I said something stupid. Then you get all in your head, and now you can't be yourself. Now you're going back to the office and you're acting like uncomfortable and funny acting. Stop. That's self-sabotaging. Get to learn to love yourself no matter what environment you're in. Now, if you're struggling with issues within your own personality that you come off a little obnoxious, maybe you're a little pushy, you're still working through how to be likable, and you have all these communication barriers because you don't understand how to be. A lot of the reasons why you're being obnoxious is you have some ego dysfunctions. So these are things you might have to start actually learning about yourself, so that when you're going around people, you're not pushing and triggering people, like slightly insulting people and like, oh, I'm just joking, girl. I'm just joking. Take a joke. You can't take a joke. And your joke is offensive. So these are things that you have to work on. So it's not always your external environment that is problematic, but it could be something within you that's problematic. You might be actually pissing people off. So these are things you have to start to do internal studies on yourself. Take the time, go online, go on these activities. What job is best for my personality type? What is my personality type? What are my traits? What are my bad traits? Do these wheels that show you your weakness. What it like, in a job interview, they're gonna ask you, well, what is your strength and weakness, right? Obviously they're asking you in pertaining to the job, but you got some jobs where they need to know how are you with people. These customer service agent jobs where you got to be on the phone all day. And when they asking you what's your strength and weakness, they want to know, well, in pertaining to people, how do you act when people come at you? If people are triggering you, how are you going to respond? Now, you're like, well, if I was home, like in my own comfort zone, and somebody's being nasty to me, I'm going to go the hell off, right? But when you think about it, if you don't want to do it on your job, obviously there's better ways to handle situations. So that means you can also handle that situation better in your own personal environment. So these are things that teaches you that some things that you would do at home, you should still do in public. And then some things that you would do at home, you should never do in public, right? Because a lot of the things that we might do at home is problematic, is out of the ordinary, or it could be offensive. So this is where you have to sit and weigh, is the things that I normally do on an everyday basis with my kids, my family. For example, they had interviewed Cardi B, and she said, I be cussing my kids out. I don't like them sometimes. They get on my nerves. We know that about her in public as well. She don't like everybody. When she gets annoyed, she's going to curse you out. She's going to throw a bottle at you. She's going to do whatever is impulsive to her nature. So these are things that she would have to work on, right? So let's say she was saying in a group setting where she's trying to get better, and they'll ask her, well, what is the things that you would consider a weakness about yourself? If she knows these things automatic, she could say, I'm very impulsive, especially when I get upset. I don't know how to hone in my emotions. That's good. If you can see these things about yourself without somebody having to sit down and pick your brain, you are on the right journey to self-improvement. This is becoming the higher self. When someone else has to call it out on you, and then you're still in denial, you're still refusing to hear the criticism, which could be constructive or not, and you're like, no, that's not how I am, and you know deep down that's really how you are, you're going to have a long journey in learning how to communicate efficiently. Because like I said, communication is not only about linguistics, it's also about understanding people's energy, people's body language. So even if somebody is not out to help or be your best friend, or they really out to sabotage you, if you know how to communicate well, you can go around that situation. You would have the ability to be able to say, I'm above these type of levels of communicating. Because you got to remember, if they're sabotaging you for no valid reason, then clearly they can't communicate well. They want to know, how can I sabotage you too, so we can all be in the same boat. So when you get to that point of understanding, people are pulling you down through your communication levels by first siphoning what type of barriers do you have. Because we as humans, we seek out other people's weakness. These are low vibrational humans, right? Now, you could be a low vibrational human and still be a good person. It just means you got some growing to do. We've all been there. But if you are around people that are low vibrational and they're seeking to find your weakness in order to feel good about themselves, we already know the communication that they're going to come with is going to be subpar. It's going to be a low level grade school, high school mentality, right? Now, I'm not saying you got to go to school. This is when I'm speaking is not literal, is metaphorically. So when I say I talk about grade school, their level of thinking on how they're going to talk to you, or how they're going to even communicate, because like I said, communication is not always talking. They're going to come at you as if they're trying to first read you, but they're not reading you with good intent. They're reading you to see how much better are they than you. So now when they start communicating with you and they see that you are above them in communication, that's going to be problematic if they're about low vibrational problems, and they're going to come to you and they're going to keep doing things to show you that they are low vibration. But that's why you got to start getting to that point where you understand that, so you can get ahead of the game and you're not caught up in traps. These office politics or relationship problems, you are in a relationship, you care about the person, but they have low vibrational communication. We're already starting off on a bad foot, right? So now you got to figure out, is this person willing to get at a better level in communication? Are they willing to up their vibration? Are they willing to learn? Okay, they could be maybe workable, but if they're problematic, you already know you're going to be the leader in that communication with that relationship. You're always going to be the one to get them to see some shit like, hey, wait a minute. You putting me in a situation that you already have preconceived notions about. I never had a fair shot. If you already putting me in the same predicament as your ex-lover, then that means I never had a fair shot in this level of union with us. That means you always going to think of me as the last person. So that's we already started off on a bad foot. So anything you say at this point, it really has no weight, because you're coming from past trauma. You're coming from things that you never got over. So how am I supposed to really respect what you're saying when everything you're saying is a false premise? So you got to get to that point where you're like, man, listen here. Everything you're saying, it sounds good, but it really ain't good, because it's not truthful. It's not real. It's not coming from a place of vulnerability. It's coming from a place of, you want to act like, okay, everything that you've been through with this last person, you're going to put it on this relationship. That's not fair. That's not fair to the other person. Now we got to deal with your baggage, and then we got to cipher through your baggage. But the problem is not that you're only ciphering through that baggage. You're also ciphering through the fact that this person want to act like that past baggage is you. So now we got to get through all the deceit, all the lies, all the illusions, just to have an actual real conversation. So when two people are arguing, and they're arguing with ego, right? You notice the argument, it sounds really stupid. It sounds stupid. So you're thinking like, okay, so for example, when you watch these reality TV shows, they argue with ego, right? So all you hear is name calling, low vibrational speech, pulling out people's cards. It's just all crap, just all ego bashing, right? But then when you finally hear somebody have a true, genuine argument or true, genuine disagreement, and they actually say, I realize, I feel, not you, but they say, I feel taken advantage of. I feel disrespected. Not, you keep disrespecting me. You keep doing it. No, you don't have, even though you may be right. This person may have actually did something that was offensive. But what you could do to change that dynamic is put it back on yourself and let the person know what's going on with you. The whole idea is you're communicating to be heard, not to be accusatory, not to be confrontational, not to be aggressive. These are communication barriers. So you coming at that person, you may be valid. Everything you might be saying might be valid, and people could hear you, be like, okay, that's valid. But now, let's say somebody else hears the argument. All it sounds like to another person is a one-up session. Oh, so you're right. Oh, so you got that point. Oh, so you're valid. But now you don't crumble this person, and now they don't even want to reciprocate what you said, because now they want to punch you in your face. Now they want to keep going and arguing. It becomes a bash. That is an ego battle. But if you come to them like, hey, I feel offended. I feel that when we spoke yesterday about da-da-da-da-da-da, I wasn't heard. Not, you didn't hear what I said. You better listen. You're not listening to me. You know how people talk, you better listen to me. And you're like, man, I ain't listening to shit. Okay, you better walk the hell off. And then it just gets crazy, right? So the best way to refrain from that is just say I feel misread. I feel misunderstood. I feel like, write that shit down. Let that be your vocabulary. I promise you, it really, people really see you when you talk like that. Even at the office, if you have an issue with your coworker, hey, I feel a little offended. Yeah, oh, you feel offended? What did I say? But if you be like, yo, you offended me. Now it's like, whoa, get your dukes up. I'm ready to punch you. You see just that one little piece of verbiage. Words matter. And assholes know that. Bitches know that. I hate to say that word. But when a person is trying to rile you up and they know that their words is like sugarcoating. They will purposely say some old mean ass words to you because they want to see a reaction. You have to understand, when you're dealing with people, you got to know what kind of energy you're dealing with. You got to try to understand what type of intention they're coming with, their motives. You kind of got to investigate a little bit. When you're starting to get to know people, especially in relationships, know what agenda they're coming from. We're going to talk about that down the line. I'm just trying to give you like some really small little tidbits on like communication barriers and how that can actually be a roadblock. So now you done said all of this to the person, you, and then you trying to sit back and wait for a good reaction. And then when that person goes further and further away from you and they distance themselves, and you're like, well, that wasn't really what I wanted. That's not what I wanted to have happen. That wasn't the intention that I set forth. Your intentions can be good, but if it don't match, it will not come out to the outcome you're looking for. The whole idea is you want a successful outcome in anything you put forth in life. Allah, God, He helps us with that. Because Allah knows the person's heart. He knows your heart, right? So even though the outcome might look crazy, it might go crazy, chaotic because of the way you came at that person, and you look like the bad guy, you look horrible, nobody knows that this person was actually abusing you or doing something mean, because now the focus is on you because of the way you communicated. Even though it'll feel crazy at first, it'll feel like hell, Allah is going to fix it in the end for you. But the reason why it had to go that route is because there needs to be a lesson learned so that you don't keep making that same mistake. And you need to say, well, why did this happen to me? Why do I feel like I was picked on? Or, you know, it's like, why, when I was trying to do a good deed, I was trying to get this person to see what I'm saying, I was trying to communicate well, why did that happen? It's not that you're a bad person, it's just to teach you that sometimes you have ego functions that also get in your own way. Because if a person is doing something based off of, let's say maybe they got a mental illness like a narcissist, or let's say you in a group setting and they're trying to make you feel like the outcast, whatever the issue is, where they're intentionally doing something evil and you react to it, but you don't have the equipment, the resource, the mentality, or the tools to know what you're dealing with, this fight that you're about to get into, you're going to go about it all kind of impulsive. Impulsivity is a dysfunction. You can be impulsive to survive if you're in the forest and some bear is running after you and you need survival skills. But even with that impulse, a lot of it makes mistakes. You still have to now ponder on, did I make the right reaction when I ran up in this tree? Is the bear going to shake the tree and now I have nothing to hold on to? Like, these are things you still going to have. Your other brain is going to kick in to try to reason with the impulse that you just made, to kind of like cushion the blow. So you're going to spaz out and yell and say something off the wall, and now your ego just got embarrassed. So now the ego got to come and tell you, okay, girl, sir, look, you said too much. You did too much. This is what we're going to do. To cushion this blow, we're going to go back and we're going to apologize for the way we overreacted. You got to be able to do these checkpoints. Stop getting so, well, I'm above apologizing, I'm above taking accountability. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It's how did you handle the situation? How did you handle it? This is a problem that a lot of people, they'll say, well, I'm an empath, or I'm a good person, or I don't do no wrong. We all do wrong. It's not about wrong or right. It's like we have to know how to be effective and efficient when we do stuff. It can't just be, well, you're wrong, so I get the right to beat the crap out of you. No, because now this person didn't learn the lesson. You want to make an impact as well. And how do you make an impact is you don't stoop to their level. Now, it doesn't mean because you're not stooping to somebody's level that you letting them be your doormat. No, there's going to be times where you need to get a little bit aggressive. Aggression is good, but it depends on how you utilize it. Everything you do has to be effective in order to get respect. This is where men fuck up too. Men will come off egotistical and macho thinking, well, I'm a man, so I get to say things and do things that's disrespectful to womankind, right? And then it comes back and it's like pie in the face. It's like a cake smash in your face when you look like a bully now. Now the same respect you were looking for is now diminished because of the way you handle the situation. You could be completely right. This household you might have, your children all out of whack, your wife all out of whack, or whatever the situation is, but the way you handle it with lack of, that's another video for another day. There's toxic masculinity and then there's masculinity, right? A true masculine understands how to balance his masculine principle with the feminine principle. So when things are out of whack, he's not going into tyrannical behavior like the president. So you have to know there's got to be balance. Same thing with the female. You have to know how to balance your feminine and your masculine energies. If you're too feminine, it goes into toxic femininity. Now, like for example, a toxic feminine might do this. She gets into an argument and she starts crying, and the argument is not even called for all the extra emotions. She's screaming down the place that nobody loves her. She's going to off herself, or she's going to just doing the most, making a spectacle, making a scene, falling on the ground, acting like a 2-year-old. Now, the situation is uncalled for. I understand if it's a real devastating situation, but it's just a small argument that turned too far gone. Too far gone. That means you have no impulse control. You have to sit down and figure out, why are you going the hell off? Same thing with the Cardi B situation. She goes into the courtroom, everybody's laughing because the jokes are funny, but then as soon as she leaves the courtroom, somebody asks her one question about her baby daddy, she throws an object at the reporter. I don't remember what she threw, like a bottle of water, something she threw at him, and it was with vicious wrath. Now, the energy it took to throw the item, that's masculine energy. That's an action-oriented energy. But it came from feminine thinking, right? Toxic femininity. Cardi B has toxic feminine traits. So these are things we have to be aware of when we're communicating, that these are going to be barriers to getting to know people, because when they see that side of you, when they see that you can't control your emotions, or that your emotions are so bottled up that you don't let them, that you don't let them out, where, you know, sometimes like with avoidant personalities, these masculines that have the avoidant repressed energy, and they like, oh, I was just born that way. And it's like, no, we're not going to blame birth on this. A lot of your avoidant tendencies come from you repressing these energies that you didn't know how to communicate. It's all about learning to communicate what you want. You can still be shy, you can still be reserved, but you still have to be effective in getting what you want out of life, as well as knowing how to speak to people, learning how to communicate well. So these are things that we're going to go further in as, you know, y'all start to learn my channel more. But we can't pretend and keep blame shifting these communication errors, these communication barriers. We got women pointing at men, we got men pointing at women. No, we're all doing it wrong, all of us. And we're teaching our children how to do it wrong. You teaching your children how to communicate at school, wrong. You telling them, oh, you need to go to school and da-da-da-da. No, that's not the way you teach a child. You got to teach a child how to have self-efficacy in their communication, meaning when you're talking to somebody or you're communicating, because I can't stress this enough, talking and communicating is two different things. Talking is a part, a version of how you communicate, but how you carry yourself, the energy you put forth, your body language, how you perceive things, your thoughts, all goes into communication. So let's say you teaching your child that poor people are the problem in America or something like that. You're always talking about, all these poor people, all these BB people. So now the child has a confirmation bias built in. So they're growing up with this built-in bias. So now when they come across situations at school, and the first thing you say, well, who was the kid you had the problem with? And he's like, oh, it's the neighbor, you know, the one that lives across the street, they have no car, you know, the poor people. And you're like, oh, that's why they're acting like that. That's why, because they're poor. They don't know any better. So you got to do this. When you go back to school, and now the kid has this weird superiority, inferiority complex when he's speaking. So now when he's expressing himself, he doesn't know, okay, is it right to say, I like this kid? Is it right to say, I like him, but I'm just offended by what he did? Now you got this kid not knowing which role to play. You're confusing the child. He's not being his own self. So this is the part of self-advocacy that we fail our children in when it comes to teaching them how to grow up confident, believe in themselves, understand their own advocacy, the ability to put forth something and know that you're going to succeed at it. That is self-advocacy. That comes with self-confidence and self-esteem. These are not traits that you can just put into you yesterday. Most of them you are grown up with. So now, if you're an adult and you have a deficiency in these areas, you're going to have to perfect it. Perfect it. Now, when I say perfect it, I don't mean perfect it to somebody else's standard, just to your own standard. Because you remember, you're living your life for yourself, right? You want to feel a successful outcome in whatever you're trying to push forth. That's the advocacy part. So now when you're putting forth something and you're getting bad results, bad after bad after bad, every time you get in a relationship, you feel like you're misunderstood, the communication is off, you go into work, nobody likes you, you're feeling like something is off. We have to start doing self-reflection. Am I communicating the way, like the efficient way? So this is things that we take for granted every day. But without communication, you have nothing. You have nothing. A blind man, a deaf person, a mute person can communicate. It doesn't mean because you can't speak or you can't see or you can't hear, like with your ears, that you cannot communicate. Communication is an energy, it is a skill, and it's action oriented. All these ways you can communicate. So get to the point where you're feeling okay with who you are as a person. Once you start to learn to work on your weaknesses, like only if the weaknesses are to the point where it's coming to become an actual barrier. In the movie The Breakfast Club, that old school movie with, what is the girl name? Molly Ringwald. In that movie, they were all different in their archetypes. Their personalities were so vast. One was like a cute rich girl with, snooty attitude. The other one was like, like a rebel. The other one was like a nerd. They all had way off different personalities. But being put in that room, they learned something called interdependence. When you're interdependent, not dependent and not independent, it's interdependent. Interdependent is the ability to rely on other people, but you're still independent, but you're relying on other people. So it's like you become a team. But you have to be careful that your interdependence doesn't turn into a cult or a bias group or in-group. These are things that when you start saying, well, I need this person to help me with this, and we work together as a team, right? Now, let's say you start to actually become a clique. You start to really like this person. You're like, man, this person is different, but I really like their style. I admire them. If they're toxic and they start pulling you into a toxic situation, it may become a toxic group. So you have to be mindful of that. I'm just giving you a general statement on interdependence. That movie can teach you a lot. Watch that movie called The Breakfast Club. It teaches you how to accept differences in people, culture differences, gender differences. We walk around with too much biased attitude, and that is a communication block. You got to learn how to get all of that judgmental, nasty thing out of your head. Now, no one's telling you take these people home and sleep with them, but you have to get along with people in this world. Because these are people that can help you get somewhere else in life. It could be a network situation. It could be a boss that might help you get to a next level. So you can't walk around, well, they're not a Mormon, so I can't speak to them. God said don't talk to... It's like, stop the bullshit, okay? God ain't say that. God is just telling you, don't fall for something that's going to put you in a toxic situation. But you are the captain of your own ship. If you see that these people are toxic, nobody tell you go be their friend and go have drinks with them and do ungodly stuff. We're just telling you, you're going to work with these people 24/7. The least you could do is make the best out of it and get what you want out of it. That's the purpose, is being able to get what you want out of life. Anyways, I do gotta go. Love you guys. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.